So.
Well, let me say that we're having success in every state. Minnesota is a great state to do business in, don't get me wrong. But when you look at the ratio of investment to return on investment, that's the point of measure in being in business, is where you're going to get the return for your shareholders and in what environment. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Just worried about you, buddy.
There's a lot of debate going on at state level, federal level about what's happening with the economy and what's the outlook going forward. And I hear at least two different points of view. One is that, we've been through this stuff before and, maybe it'll be a slower, longer recovery, but, we'll get back to where we were, wherever that was. But there's another point of view that says the global economy has changed in ways that we have to rethink the whole picture because, it's the total pie is not increasing fast enough for us to get back to where we have as big a piece as we once had because there's other economies coming into their own. And so you've got individuals that seem to be waking up, in terms of how they handle their own finances. Businesses have certainly either come to grips with that if they haven't been big enough to be bailed out, they've either failed or they've adjusted. City government, we heard some good information last night on things the city has done. And I'm just curious to your individual opinions whether this is a temporary thing with the state and that you expect in this biennium or next to be back to where we were, or whether we really have to come to grips and live within our means as a state.
I think.
Go ahead, Reg.
I think we're the second. I think the landscape has changed. We're not going to see in 2 or 4 years that we're back to where we were. I think things are different. Again, I referred to Tom Stinson before, and that change in wage issue. But he also pointed out some pretty just stark information, and he said, in a decade we might be back to where we were in 2006. But all those things you talked about. Companies have learned that people will do more for less money just to hang on to a job. One of the interesting things is he walked through all of the economic indicators, and the only place that's up is corporate profit. It is up now about 5.5%. Everything else was still in the negative numbers. So businesses are being profitable during the end of this recession, but people are working more for less money. The unemployment is up, and it's going to stay up. The good news, and the mayor pointed this out last night, is we're below the state average. We've been for the entire recession. We're below the national average. We have been for the entire recession. So there's a lot of applause to people in this room and in the community who diversified the economy over the last 30 years. But no, a lot of people are out, wanting to run for governor, and the one question I'm asking is, how will you, as chief executive of the state, and Mr. Burning, this probably goes as best I can answer to your question with my 1 year in the legislature, how will you, as chief executive of the state, bring us together as Minnesotans to have a conversation about what we want and how we pay for it? Because I felt like we spent the entire last session working on the second half of that equation. How are we going to pay for it without buy-in from Minnesotans on what we want? What is it in quality of life in our state, whether it's healthcare or education, or you use the word entitlement or job creation? What are the things that we think are important in Minnesota? Because what we've seen is when people have buy-in on that, like a gas tax to pay for roads and bridges, that gets passed, or an additional sales tax to pay for outdoors and hunting and clean water, Minnesotans are willing to pay for it because there's buy-in that those are things we want. But on some of the other things, we haven't had an honest-to-goodness state conversation about those for quite a while. And I think in this resetting, that's what has to now take place with the next governor.
Just a quick follow-up. Do you think we're going to basically lose this year because of gubernatorial politics, or do you think some of that can start?
I'll let more veteran members answer that.
I think we're not going to lose. And to get back to your first question, I need a definition for what you mean by live within our means. Because if we're talking just about setting the state budget at what money is coming in, that means an awful lot of jobs
Especially in
and
the
services
Yeah.
that Minnesotans depend on are gone.
Yeah, well, I
And
guess-
so, are you saying live within our means to where we were? Or are we going down? Or are we seeking other solutions? I think this session, this legislative session, is going to be one of seeking solutions and cooperation and bringing back what we've heard over the summer and reactions to the last legislative session. We're going to be building on that, and it's not going to be big and fancy. It's going to be a work session where we get in, we solve the basic problems, we balance the budget, we look to the future budget, and we get out. And I think where there's not going to be a great big list of things other than the bonding bill of, oh, look how wonderful we are. But we are going to stabilize. And then
Actually, Mr. Ross.
comes the gubernatorial election
Oh.
after we're done.
You're getting bumped by David Ross. You're next, though.
We hope to bring 500-600 people down to the Capitol for this legislative session, Duluth and St. Louis County at the Capitol the first week of March. How can we most effectively engage this energy to bring about or to move forward the Duluth project? What advice do you have for us? How can we make the most of that event?
Well, as always, I think you need to be focused in your message, and you have to be clear and concise. And you probably 3 top priorities, and to bring that forward with a unified voice. And I think that the idea of meeting the legislators is very, very important. They remember you when you come into their office. And so it may not always be just the people on the bonding committees either. It's important to meet as many of the legislators as you can. But it is absolutely important to meet with the key decision makers, the chairs of the committees and the bonding committees also.
Is there a particular project that you feel has the greatest potential for funding? And Senator Solon, you talked about a few, or Tom, you did as well, about the sewer system as well as the airport. Should those be, in your view,
The
the most
train.
likely projects for success?
And the train.
Okay, and the train.
Yeah.
And the sewer.
Oh, yeah. And the sewer, it has some, is high on the rating list, so it has a good chance, but you can't let it slide. You have to be right behind it, backing it from the.
If we don't get the sewer, we could go on the train. Take it all the way.
No!
It's got Frank and